the Landscape Architecture Committee with the Tennessee State Board of Architectural and Engineering Examiners. Today is June the 2nd, 2021. The time is right at 9:12 a.m. I'd like to make a roll call, please. Frank? Here. Robert? Here. And I'm Blair, so I'm on. Maria, I believe you have a statement to make.
Yes, thank you, Blair. This is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Tennessee Board of Architectural and Engineer Examiners Landscape Architect Committee, which is taking place in a hybrid format, both by electronic means, and we have a member appearing in person. This is open to the public in person and also via WebEx. Today is Wednesday, June 2nd, 2021. Notice of this meeting was properly posted to the board's website. Because there is not a physical quorum present, a statement of necessity is read into the record and filed with the Tennessee Secretary of State as required by statute. Pursuant to TCA 844-108B2, if a physical quorum is not present at the location of a meeting of a governing body, and in order for a quorum of members to participate by electronic or other means of communication, the governing body must make a determination that a necessity exists. That determination must include a recitation of the facts and circumstances on which it was based. Further, TCA 844-108A3 defines necessity as matters to be considered by the governing body at that meeting, require timely action by the body. The physical presence by a quorum of the members is not practical within the period of time requiring action, and that participation by a quorum of the members by electronic or other means of communications is necessary. As stated, this is a regularly scheduled meeting for the Landscape Architect Committee. The purpose of this meeting with members attending by teleconference is to discuss regularly scheduled items of the committee. The WebEx teleconference application is being utilized in order to provide the most efficient and effective manner for those who are not able to travel prior to the board meeting. All voting will be conducted by roll call. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you. Okay. The Landscape Architecture Committee, there's a couple of things that I have on the agenda, and do you have any additions to the agenda? Robert or Frank?
I don't, no, sir.
Okay, so I know. We have two items to discuss, and I think the one that's going to take possibly the longest would be the proposed statute or rule change discussion. Maria and I have been working to put together language where it gives the LA committee and the board the flexibility to deal with applicants that have extenuating circumstances. As we are set up now, the Landscape Architecture Committee has no flexibility. We really have no ability to render any type of decisions for someone that may meet many of the aspects or all the aspects, but because of one little particular item that may be in the way, that we just have no ability to deal with that. So the Landscape Architecture Committee rules and law are pretty definite, are absolutely definite. So Maria and I have been working on that. And Maria, I'm going to hand this over to you. And if you would just further explain sort of where we started and where we are now.
Yes, thank you, Blair. Yes. So we have been working on this since, last year sometime. However, whenever the department asked for statute changes that we would like to be submitted, this was something that was included in the package for this board. So the two changes that we added are in, and I just want to caveat this discussion by saying, as always, this is something that I submitted on behalf of the board to the department. I still have not heard whether or not this will move forward and be presented to the governor's office in their package, but this is at this stage, it has been submitted and I have not heard anything further on it. However, that being said, we wanted discretion to approve applicants or licensees in other states who are overly qualified and cannot practice in the state because of the stringent way the statute's written. So in TCA 622802, that covers accredited degrees, and we added a subsection under that. This provides for situations where applicants would not hold a degree accredited by the Landscape Architectural Accreditation Board. And it provides that if that individual has evidence of having obtained the statutory minimum acceptable practical experience in LA work and at least 5 references, then they can be considered for licensure in this state. And then under TCA 622304, under reciprocity, there is discretion in subsection B of that statute that states architects may be given licensure in Tennessee if they hold a national certificate issued by NCARB. So we just added language in this part of the statute to say that if that person also holds if a landscape architect seeking reciprocity in this state holds a national certificate issued by CLARB, then they would be able to receive licensure in Tennessee. So those are the 2 that we submitted. And I'm happy to answer any questions or discuss further. And I'd also like to thank Blair for all of his helpful work on this and suggestions and edits. He was extremely valuable in this process. So thanks, Blair.
Thank you. It's interesting that we have basically looked at how the engineer's statute is set up and how the architect's statute is set up, and we just, I think, fairly seamlessly just inserted this in where it follows suit. That's really about it. Maria, do you by chance have that where you can share that where they can, where Frank and Robert can see that?
Yeah, I can send it. I'm not on the WebEx, so I can send it via email if that helps. Okay.
Well, I wonder if yeah, I guess it would be helpful to have a copy of this. But
yeah, that worked for me, Blair.
If you'll just send an email, I can open it here.
Great.
Same here.
that sounds good. And with regard to the upcoming board meetings that we have, the next couple, I'm going to put on a separate hat here for a minute. I've also been asked to chair the definitions committee, and that dovetails into this to some degree in maybe an outer conversation. But I think that in the coming months we will be getting into the definitions of our professions and sort of getting down and trying to finalize those aspects of this. But as far as providing the landscape architecture committee a little flexibility to deal with folks with extenuating circumstances, I think that I really believe this does it. And Maria's done a great job on this. And frankly, a great part of Maria's difficulty that she's had with this, which hasn't been difficult for her other than explaining it to me. So it's been a real learning experience for me as well. Thank you, Maria. I did receive this. Frank and Robert, you have this in front of you?
I do. Hold on just
Yeah, I do.
Yep.
Okay. So you can see in the blue text, I believe, is what was added. Correct, Maria?
Yes, that is correct.
Give you a chance to read it.
Yeah, Blair, this is Frank. I've read both of these, and I have no problem with it. What would be the committee's? What would be their direct? I mean, do we bring this to the board? Move to bring this to the board for approval of the whole board? Is that the idea?
Right.
Yes, that's what I believe would be the appropriate way to move forward with this. So what I was hoping is that we could discuss this, and if there's any any kind of issue, then that's one thing. But if you both support this, I certainly do, then we would take it to the board and just make sure the board understands. Now, Maria, you were going to discuss this at the board level anyway, were you not?
Yes, sorry, Blair. I didn't mean to interrupt you there. I just wanted to mention one thing. So procedurally, I was told that we don't need a vote on these matters. You know, it's great. We do need to discuss and have everyone on the same page and aware of the changes. But as far as a voting action, that's not necessary. Just because at the end of the day, this, you know, we need the input of the board for the language and what needs to happen. But it's not an action item, and the fact that this is not something that the board, it's kind of something the department takes on with the recommendation of the board. So I don't need an official vote from everyone, but we can certainly,
Okay.
you know, certainly discuss and present. And but as far as an action item, we do not need a vote on it.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you for the clarification. Robert, do you have any questions about what you see in front of you?
You know, the only question I have, and I'll go back and kind of put my engineer hat on, is the substantial equivalence. How do you determine? Let me make sure I'm getting there. A substantial equivalent degree from a, and here's why I'm asking that. We have that same conversation in the engineering committee, and we've got Dr. Smith that typically does that for us. Do you have a way, a mechanism, a resource, whatever, to determine substantial equivalence? And Maria's kind of shaking her head, so maybe she's got an answer. I don't know.
Maria, I'm not sure if you have a different answer than I do. I've had a conversation with two individuals here in Tennessee. One is Andy Pouncey, who was on the board, the A&E board, and then Gary Menendez, who I believe recently retired from the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, where they would be together and on standby, if you will, to assist us in those evaluations, much like Dr. Smith. So, Robert, following suit with how the engineers handle it, that was my approach to it.
Yeah, I think that's helpful, because I think it helps to have somebody that's been in academia, because there are a lot of things about that really we as practitioners kind of don't get in the weeds on and understand how those curricula are written. So I think as long as you've got that resource, Blair, or Maria, whoever, I think that's that puts the nail on the coffin for me.
Okay, good. Good. Maria, did you have anything else to add to that?
I did not. Thank you, Blair, for covering that.
Okay. All right. That sounds good. So I wanted to introduce this to you and let you know sort of where we are with this. And since we don't need a vote, I guess that we were done with this item, unless you have any additional comments. Not seeing any. Let's move forward to the definitions discussion. I know that engineers are working on their definition. I believe architects are working on their definition as well, and sort of waiting for NCARB to show their hand. Does that sound correct, Frank?
Yeah, the NCARB annual meeting is, I think it's the third week in June, where right now they have proposed the revised model law, which includes a definition of the practice of architecture, and it's expected that will pass. Okay.
So in Tennessee, we have a definition prepared and ready to go. Much like you with NCARB, we looked at CLARB's definition of landscape architecture and frankly didn't feel like it was tight enough. So that's to some degree how the landscape architecture definition came around. We looked at CLARB's, we compared, I believe we looked at 8 states surrounding us, and then ASLA assisted me in preparing the definition of landscape architecture. So at this moment, I believe the landscape architecture definition is good to go. What I need to do is to send that to you and have that ready for you, because in the coming months, we'll be discussing our definitions for each of our disciplines. So that's really all I wanted to say with regard to definitions here at this LA committee meeting.
Larry, let me ask you a question, and this may be none of my business at this time, but part of the issue we have with the engineering definition, and frankly with any of these statute changes or anything, is when do we get outside voices on this, so that those outside voices can be partners as we go forward rather than be adversaries going. Have you had a chance to kind of go run this through other landscape architect group, or Nathan or whoever, just to kind of, see where maybe some of the pitfalls are? I know as engineers, we're going to have the same struggle. As we're going to have this definition, and I'm fully confident that there will be 5,000 different voices on what that looks like. What does this word mean? What does that word? And if I think doing it in advance, I'm not being long-winded, but doing it in advance, we can kind of knock that down before it becomes something that there's a fight brewing over. So anyway, have you had those conversations?
We have had conversations amongst the design landscape architects. We have not gone to the contracting side. Unlike engineering, you have, at least 5 or 6 engineering groups, I believe.
Correct.
And for landscape architects, it's primarily the American Society of Landscape Architecture.
Okay.
And so we have not gone out to other groups. We have, those in the contracting industry look at design totally differently than the designers do. And ASLA represents both. Anyone, it represents the design build side, but certainly the designers as well. So to answer your question, no, we have not gone out beyond ASLA at this moment. But that's an interesting question. So let me get with our group, and let's see if there's others that we do need to get with. I think that's a good idea. With regard to Nathan has reviewed this, and he's fine with it. I don't think Nathan's real great about defining our profession anyway, for any of us.
Right.
Not just landscape architects, but for any of us.
Right.
But we're beyond that moment,
Well, and again, I'm not trying to. I just know that. I know that we've had stuff in the past that maybe didn't get vetted through some of the engineering folks, and there were either questions or there was some opposition at inopportune times. So, I think if you can, the more you can kind of get that vetted before it gets kind of final, the better chance you have at not having to kind of defend it on the back end as much.
Well said. I think it's a great thought. So I will move forward with that. Makes good sense. Frank, any comments?
Yeah, let me get unmuted here. I guess my only comment has to do with probably more of the definitions committee, but I've seen what each, at least to this point, what each discipline has proposed to this point. Let me put it that way. And the formats are different. And I know the disciplines are different. But when it actually goes to the rulemaking hearing, or however this gets in the book, I think it needs to be somehow consistent among each other as to the format that it's presented. And that may sound strange, but it's like, I've seen the engineering version has very particular, aspects of what they do listed. But is that really a definition? And the interior design, of course, I've got a meeting with that committee coming up here in an hour, but I mean, there's the full definition of interior design that's being presented is 5 pages long. You know, and the architectural, the NCAR version that we're looking at is maybe a page. And I think, Blair, that the landscape architects have similarities to what the NCAR version is.
Yes.
But somehow or other, and Bob, I'd like, you to kind of comment on this, is how do we make it look like somebody's not making for lack of a better term, a land grab, or it's like we want to make sure nobody else can do what we're doing type thing. What we're looking for is a definition of the practice.
Yeah. So,
and I'm not sure. I think
no,
there's a lot of work to be done to get there.
And I'm not going to disagree, because I think we had that same debate in the engineering committee, and I've listened to some of the definitions committee discussion. You almost sometimes have to use the words, the examples to define it, because the words don't necessarily do it. So I don't know. Can we make it a little more broad? Probably. But the issue then is we have to make sure that I'm stumbling. I agree with what you're saying. I don't want to make it to where the definition is we're staking our territory in every place. But we need to have enough stuff in the definition to define where those boundaries are, I believe. And that's kind of the hard part, isn't it? Where those overlaps may be, and then is there a caveat to let us waive some of those overlaps with the appropriate protection? Did I say that? I think I tried to say that right. But, you and I, for instance, would probably have overlap when we talk about foundation designs or something. That architects have done some of that. We've done some of that. Footer design more, and both been very capable. But we don't want to exclude you from that territory, or do we want to exclude an engineer from that territory? I don't know. I agree with you on the format, though. I think we do need to have some consistency there, so that people find what they need to find in all the definitions.
Right,
Frank, I agree wholeheartedly with that, but I think that this is a discussion more for the definitions committee than the LA committee.
Yeah, I think at some point that we all need to lay out, here's what we're proposing, and then we need to sit down and hash out how we actually present it.
Yeah. In tomorrow's board meeting, I'm going to ask that we set up a definitions committee meeting for our next board meeting, so we can go ahead and get this started.
Yeah. Is it going to be at 10 a.m. on Wednesday?
Let's make it a little earlier, because I only left the house this morning at 5:45, so let's just make it just a little earlier.
Well, we could make it at 8 a.m. on Thursday, and then have the meeting at 9. Anyway,
right. Well, we'll get there. Okay, so with regard to the LA committee, any additional items to discuss? Hearing none. Okay. Well, thank you all for attending. Robert, thank you for getting to Nashville early enough to attend the meeting. We really appreciate that.
I got a hug out. I got a hug out of it, so I'm not sure I'm supposed to say that publicly, but I did, so that was good.
There you go.
All right.
That's good. Well, thank you all. Well, I will see everyone tomorrow, and thank you. And I believe that will conclude the Landscape Architecture Committee meeting. Thank you.
Be safe.
All right. Thanks.